Today, I'm joined by Brittany Hart, a Salesforce veteran dating back to 2010 who helped scale Fortimize as its second employee before leaving to found her own SI, Platinum Cubed. And after a successful exit there, she is now the founder and CEO of Communiscape, which helps organizations fix communication breakdowns that derail technology implementations and change initiatives. Brittany, welcome to Assembly Line.
Thanks, Scott. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you were able to join and we could work this out. It was wonderful meeting you at Texas Dreamin'. So, of course, I know a little bit about your background, but for viewers and listeners, maybe you could share a little about your Salesforce journey and how it led you to Communiscape today.
I would be happy to. So my Salesforce journey actually started, as you mentioned, back in 2010. I was a front desk admin. So not a Salesforce admin, just a front desk administrative assistant. And someone at the tax and accounting firm that I was working at said, "Hey, I think Salesforce is going to be a thing one day, and you should apply for my job because I'm getting a promotion." And I said, "Okay, well, what is Salesforce and what do you do?" And he said, "Well, Salesforce is this great database. It's online, and you're responsible for making sure all of the directors' information about meetings and business development and clients are in the system. So you meet with them, you gather information, they take you out to lunch, and then you put it in the system and you report back to what's going on." I said, "Okay, well, how often do we go out to lunch? Because that's the important part of this conversation, obviously." And he's like, weekly or whatever. And so I applied for the job and became CRM coordinator and learned Salesforce from a end user perspective. And from there, got introduced to a commercial real estate company. And they said, "We have Salesforce. No one knows how to use it. And we don't have anyone to, fix it or tweak it or whatever that's called." And I said, "Okay, well, I've been using Salesforce now for a year. I've been studying for this admin exam. If you take a chance on me and hire me, I'll come in and I'll build the system and teach everyone how to use it." And at first they were like, "I'm not so sure about this." And I said, "Okay, no problem," and walked away. And the next day they called and said, "Actually, yeah, we will take a chance. Come on in and show us what you can do." And from there, that led me to meeting the CEO of what started as Force Optimized and rebranded to Fortimize. And through that, he said, "Hey, have you ever thought about consulting on the side?" And that side hustle turned into becoming employee number 2 at that company and growing from business analyst, project manager, running the delivery team to running the sales team to VP of revenue. And one day I looked at myself and said, "Okay, I've helped build this company for someone else. Why don't I go do it for myself?" So departed there and started P3 or Platinum Cubed. We call it P3 for short, and did that for 6 years. And I kept seeing this pattern over and over again with clients where technology, Salesforce ultimately, would get to the point of rolling out and doing training, and people weren't excited. They weren't really sure why the project was happening in the first place. And what ultimately got blamed as a technology problem, I sat back and I said, "Well, this isn't a technology problem at all. This is a communication problem." And so that is where Communiscape thus was born, on my heart and desire for everyone to be able to communicate better inside technology projects and out.
Ironic, isn't it, that even CRM experts really need a lot of help when it comes to communication. You'd think that would go hand in hand with the CRM system.
Yeah, you would think, because that's, a big thing that CRM's fixing, right? Is how do we move information and data around the organization? But yet we don't address, okay, well, there's different communication styles, and how do we actually communicate so that each style can hear and understand and take action that we want them to in that whole project scheme of things?
Sure, makes sense. Okay, well, so in what's probably a surprise to no one, communication is obviously key in all aspects of personal and professional lives. Um, but specifically, the viewers and listeners of this podcast will be from the ISV side of the fence. So I'd be curious to maybe walk through with you how. First off, I'd love to hear about your framework. I know we talked about a little bit about that at Texas Stream, and I'd love to share that with listeners and viewers. And then specifically, I'd like to also maybe chat about how they can apply that in all their different relationships as an ISV, uh, internally as they're growing their ISV and building company culture, externally with partners, because obviously a popular go-to-market strategy for ISVs is to partner with SIs, as well as communicating with customers and leads and hopefully turning those into customers long term. So maybe we can start with the framework. Could you walk us through the Communiscape framework that you've come up with?
Definitely. So, with the Communiscape framework, I always start with the four elements of communication. So, there's earth, wind, fire. And if I stopped there, we'd just have a band. But we have water as well as our fourth element. And so those are the four defaults that every person has, right? They gravitate towards one of them as their dominant. And then they have a little bit of the others all mixed in there to formulate the whole person. And so with that, our wind and fire communicators are external processors. So in any ISV, right, you're going to be working with a number of people, as you mentioned, partners, clients, internally. And so identifying if the person across from you is an external processor can help you start matching their communication style. So you're probably saying, what the heck is an external processor? Well, that is the person in the meeting or in a conversation who starts putting all of their thoughts on display for the room to see. So a question is asked like, what should we do for rollout? And they jump in and they're like, oh, what if we do a launch party and then we have a t-shirt to go with it, and then we do the training, and then we do a wrap up, and then the next day, and they're like, wait. No, let's go back. Let's start with doing the training so that we have everyone's focus, and then do this, and then do that. And they're putting that whole thought process on display. So those are our external processors. So
Okay.
you're probably sitting there saying, okay, that's clear. But what about our internal processors? Well, those are individuals who are going to be doing all of that and probably a little bit more depth to it inside their head. So in a meeting, they're probably sitting there very engaged, looking, but they're not really speaking up because they're processing all of that internally for them to be able to do, but not for the world to see. And those are our water and our earth elements. So that's kind of the difference between the two. Does that make sense so far?
It does. And you mentioned that while you have a dominant element, you're normally a blend of the four uh, earth, wind, fire, and water, right? I think back to one of my first roles. Uh, part of joining a company, I took a Myers-Briggs test. Um,
Yes.
I cannot remember honestly what I was labeled as, but I do think it was similar in that you could kind of fall onto a scale with all the different options.
Definitely. And with that, there's introvert and extrovert, right? Which is
Mm,
where you get your energy. So people who want to go and get their energy levels from other people, right, are kind of more those party goers or always looking to be around people versus introverts that are recharging by doing solitary things. So reading a book, listening to music, but kind of just being alone to recharge that energy level. So
hmm
you're spot on that a lot of times that introvert extrovert comes up when we talk about our external processing and our internal processing. Um, and those two are actually not related between the two ways that we're talking about it, which is why I really like to emphasize the processing part. because it's how you think through and make decisions, not necessarily where you get your energy from.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm curious, is there a specific element that you see across the Salesforce ecosystem more regularly
I
than the others?
definitely I definitely see more elements gravitating towards particular roles within the ecosystem. And
Interesting.
that has to do with your day to day, right? So if you're in a day to day situation where you are talking and on meetings and ideating and facilitating a lot, we tend to see more external processors in those roles than the roles where you might be, very deep in code, or working through solutions and not interacting with people as much. But you're really kind of deeper in thought process than externally keeping a room or a conversation going.
Very cool. Now you got me thinking. I would love to see one day uh, a Communiscape blog post on the dominant elements of all the different Salesforce characters and mascots, like Astro, and
Now you got my mind going. Yeah, that would be
wouldn't
that
that
would
be
be a
fun?
really fun blog post to do. Yeah, maybe we could collaborate on that. That would be great.
I I love that. That'd be awesome. Okay,
Okay,
so
so we talked external and internal, but there's also, to get the quadrants, we have to look at two different pieces. So the last two pieces is relationship focused or goal and task focused. So our wins and our earths are focused on that relationship. And our wins are really focused on the experience. So if you think about kind of how I walked through that launch of a project, they're thinking of what is everyone going to experience as we go through this project and to that launch so that we have this story to tell. And that's kind of the framing that they're thinking when they're thinking about relationship and how people fit into everything.
Mhm.
And then our earths are looking at, okay, how are we all going to get there together? How do we make sure that everyone is bought into this, is on board, that there's not resistance, that there's not conflict, that everyone is good with the process? And that's kind of where our earths are looking from a relationship standpoint. On the other side, we have our fires, and they are very goal oriented. So when someone says, hey, we're going to get this project live, they're thinking, okay, how fast can we do it? What does success look like? How are we going to know that we were successful and be blazing, literally like a trail of fire, right? As quick as they can to that end goal. And our waters are going to be looking at what is the right or the best way to do this. So have we looked at all of the ways to build the system? Is this a flow? Is this Apex? Like, where are we going with the actual solution so that we're doing the best in the right way possible when we're going towards this goal or towards this task? And so that's really where the four elements then all come together in how they're focused and thinking about communication and decisions.
Okay, I love this. So I want to bring it back to an ISV that is maybe looking to grow their team. Perhaps they're a company of one, or just still small enough that they're still establishing their culture. When let's say you have a leader that is has fire as their dominant element, should
Mhm.
they be going out and recruiting similar personalities and communication styles and finding more fires because there's strength in numbers, or is this a thing where you want a balanced team and maybe balance out the fire of the CEO with some water with their direct reports?
This is probably the number one question I get, and I love
Okay.
it because if you are a leader or someone who's in a leadership position, which I would argue everyone's in a leadership position to some capacity, once you understand your element and you can find your comfort in that, because there is no better or worse element, we all have our strengths, uh, that I say show up in our comfort zones. And then when we get flipped into our discomfort zone, we communicate a little bit differently. I'm sure we've all had those bad days where we're like, oh, didn't show up the way that I should have. And so when you can own your element, the best thing to do is to surround yourself with other elements, right? Because if you just get all fire, for example, you're all going to be blazing so fast that you're going to miss the depth that a water brings in thinking through the obstacles ahead of you. So if you think about water always gets to the ocean, as we learned from Finding Nemo. So it's always looking at those obstacles on how are we going to get to that end goal. If you don't have someone like that on the team and comfortable to speak up and share that, you're going to miss those and you're just going to blaze and keep kind of pivoting, right? As we cross that bridge when we get there. Same thing with Earth. Earth, if you have a bunch of fires, you may be leaving a large part of your team out unknowingly and creating this conflict within the team because they're not sure of where we're going. And so Earth's on the team, make sure that that comes together and that's inclusive of everyone that you're building. And same thing with wind. Wind is bringing this energy and experience. So what is the story that you're going to be able to tell about this company that you're building and scaling? And if you're missing wind, then you're going to miss out on sharing and pausing and saying, oh, yeah, let's celebrate this because this is a monumental thing. And so that's where they all balance each other out and come together. So I really encourage, if you have a team that is heavy in one element or two elements, to seek out to round that out, but being sure of yourself, right? That, okay, we're bringing in someone who's going to communicate different. So we need to flex into their element style so that we actually can have the conversation.
That makes sense. I'm curious if that sounds like a very good strategy, and I'm curious if you find when you're brought in to help companies struggling with this, if it's more common though to find folks that gravitate toward just hiring more clones of their communication style.
I mean, that happens all over the place, right? We
Yeah.
always look for people who look like us or sound like us. Like that's just kind of our default because then it's comfort, right? So it's like, oh, you
Mm,
talk like me. This is great. We're just going to get together. But what happens is the elements can also clash. And so
mm,
in those clashes, and we'll stick on fire since you brought it up, but if you have a fire and a fire and they both have different goals, they might just dig their heels in so hard that the goals start tearing things apart because the fire is going in different directions. And so that's where the elements can balance each other out and clash with each other. But the same element can also just have devastation if you think of a wildfire wiping out everything or water, like a tsunami that just comes and drowns everything out, right? So that's where you have to be comfortable in that diversity in your communication styles to get the benefit of everything.
yeah, that makes sense. I guess I hadn't considered that just because you have the same communication style doesn't mean you agree on every single decision being made at the company. And so you could certainly have issues even with similar communication style.
Yeah, I mean, bringing it down to an ISV, it could be around a product release, right? Where a fire is like, this is the next thing on the roadmap. And another fire is like, no, this is the next thing on the roadmap. Okay, well, where are we going to, find that goal oriented and bring it down together so that we can get to what is the next product that we're going to roll out?
Sure. Okay. Um, all right. Well, let's talk also about communication outside the company. You obviously have history with from the SI space, scaling Fortimize to the behemoth it became, and then also with P3. I'm sure part of that journey involved partnering with ISVs along the way. And I'm sure some of the lessons you teach now at Communiscape were learned maybe the hard way during that journey. So could you walk us through how someone on the other side of the fence, an ISV, should be thinking about communication in their partnerships with SIs and perhaps other ISVs as well, because that also happens.
Yeah. And just to put it out there, Fortimize did have an ISV, still does have an ISV app on the agent. What is it now?
Agent
agent
exchange.
agent exchange. Sorry, see, I told you I predate that. It's still the app exchange in my mind, but agent exchange. And so does P3. P3 has two of them on there as well. So I've sat on kind of both sides, but speaking from an SI working with ISVs, I think one thing that the initial relationships that we always rubbed on that communication was ISVs coming in and saying, okay, what clients can you introduce us to?
Mm,
And to them, because it's a product, it's a very different selling and relationship model than ISVs, or sorry, than SIs. And so with SIs, I mean, I had clients, our average was 3.5 years of longevity. So I had built long-term relationships with these clients and directing them and steering them to different products, different Salesforce products, all of those. And so I think that's where, from a communication standpoint, having an ISV come in and be like, hey, share your client list with us so that we can see where we can plug in, right? And me being a fire communicator, I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, let's slow down. Like, let's actually build a relationship first,
hmm
um, and work with that, rather than kind of starting out with let's just exchange client lists. So that was one piece that I had to learn working with ISVs is okay, what is your actual sales model, relationship model? And then where can I take that first step in the partnership and choose a client that I can introduce you to so that, again, on the other side, because I wanted their client list too, right? That's how it works. And so, right, being able to come in and then help their clients as well. So I always say that like you have to give to get.
mm,
You can't just come in and start asking for what you want.
that makes sense. I guess I could see how, um, if an ISV approached the partnership as too transactional, then some like it kind of breaks the model of SIs where you have these long-standing relationships that are based on trust, right? Because um, you don't want to be promoting a new app every single time you meet with your clients as an SI, just because there's a new partnership behind the scene, because then that would erode that trust eventually.
That, and I mean, quite often we're talking with our clients on a weekly basis, right?
Hmm
From an SI perspective, and from an ISV perspective. And when we had ours, we would check in probably quarterly, right? If everything's running with our package and our product, we're not talking with them and advising them on a weekly basis. And so it's a
hmm
very different kind of touch point model as well when you're looking at product versus professional services.
Sure, that makes sense. Okay. And what about collaborating with other ISVs?
We did that quite a bit. So um, with other packages that were complementary to ours, I was a big advocate on how can we package or bundle something to give a solution to a new prospect or a new client and coming together because quite often they would say, hey, can you just build this from scratch, right? And we'd be like, okay, well, no, but if you we could, but the better way to do it is actually to put these two packages in and then have us do a little bit of custom work to have them work and flow together. And then you're getting, the IP from both of those rather than us custom building everything. And then you have to maintain everything at that point.
Sure. Okay, that makes sense. All right, I'm curious now how all this translates to kind of the marketing side of the fence. When ISVs are reaching out in their own messaging to prospects, when they're handling demos and sales calls, how should they be thinking about their own communication style when they're talking to these prospects or customers on those quarterly check-ins?
Yeah. I think starting with where you started with marketing materials, right? So oftentimes a marketing piece will get written in the default element or the dominant element of the person who wrote it, right? Which,
Hmm
okay, that's good because you got a strong marketing person, but that means you're writing it for one. out of 4, right? 25% of people in the world is going to actually resonate with your marketing piece. So sitting back and learning how to write a marketing piece that talks to all 4 of the elements, now you're having a broader impact when you're marketing and sending out that material, emails, etc. So that's the piece that I would advise on the marketing side is, okay, look through what lens you wrote it through and check that against, the other elements. Or use AI to say, hey, these are the elements. Like, did I hit all of them or did I leave someone out? So that's what I would say on the marketing side. As you're looking with your prospects and your clients, a lot of work that we do is teaching people not just to know their element, but to identify the element very quickly of the person they're talking to. And the faster you can learn that in a sales or customer service perspective and start flexing into that, you're going to have a lot better communication and a lot better results, i.e., closing more deals, upselling, cross selling, than if you just stay and make everyone adapt to you. So we take a very other focus approach. And that's what I would encourage ISVs to do is, okay, set your personal goal or your company goal off to the side for a moment, look across and figure out what their goal is, and then where those line up to have the conversation.
Putting the customer first. I like that.
Yeah. I mean, we say it all the time, right? But like actually doing it is speaking their language. There's one thing to say it, and then there's another to actually take the steps and put the customer first.
Sure. You brought up AI, and so I'm curious. It's very easy these days to leverage AI in marketing, general communication via email with coworkers, Slack messages, etc. Do you feel that folks do a disservice to themselves by leveraging a tool like that, because then they're watering down whatever their communication style is to be this, amorphous amalgam that the LLM has produced?
So you're leading me into where our marketing is actually going next month in September.
Okay.
And we've been collecting posts for events that look exactly the same. They're for different
Mm,
companies, different events. But it's all AI, and you can tell because it's like the same 3 things at the bottom. Like it's the same format.
right.
And so 100% yes. I think people are doing a huge disservice to themselves by having AI do everything. Now, I think AI has a great place. We use it internally. I mean, I use it on a daily basis. But at the end of it, I look at everything and then I actually like put my voice back into it and I change design elements and I think about, okay, what am I actually trying to say instead of this template that keeps getting spit out and then used. And then AI sees that, oh, this was posted on social media. So this was a good template. Let me reuse that, let me give this other person that same idea and same template. Um, and so that's where I think communication and the art of communication is really never going to go away from being like your true self and learning how to do that. AI can support you, but don't let it just write your emails and your marketing stuff. People can tell. And then they look at it
Yeah.
and they're like, okay, well, you didn't care enough. So why should I care about you or the company you're promoting?
Yes, that's a good point. It's a good way of phrasing it. I like your idea too, though, of leveraging tools, whether it's AI or something else, or just pulling in other coworkers that maybe have a different communication style from you, but just making sure that your marketing and messaging is speaking to all 4 elements. I mean, I think that a lot of marketers are accustomed to like A/B testing campaigns based on different word choice or what have you. So I feel like your framework fits very nicely into that. Like, what if we just split our campaign list into fourths and send out all the different elements, see what kind of response we get, and try to figure out, of our prospects or our customers, which element really speaks most to them, and we could either double down in the future, or if nothing else, just segment, I guess, our messaging accordingly.
Yeah. And for large companies, I think that's spot on is segmenting, and you'll see what resonates with those groups, and then switch the person to another element the next time and
Ooh.
see if they gravitate, because then you can start learning their element through marketing. Um, and again, large companies, you can produce 4 different copies, right? And do all of that. Small companies, I say, hey, I'm not telling you to do 4 pieces. I'm telling you to write for 4 elements in a single piece. And there's a structure to that we teach in how to actually structure your communication for all 4 elements. And there is facts behind which element you speak to first in each of those.
Hmm. Very interesting. Very cool. Well, okay. This feels like a pretty good place to start wrapping up. But before we do, first I want to just ask, you've been through so many different organizations, scaled companies like Fortimize from a very small team to very large. Obviously, got a lot of lessons learned along the way. And though your experience was mostly on the SI side, you mentioned that P3 and Fortimize also were ISVs as well, and you of course collaborated with many. So I'm curious if you have any advice. Could be around communication style and messaging, or it could not. But any general advice you'd like to share with someone who's earlier on in their Salesforce journey, specifically their Salesforce ISV journey.
I think being true to yourself and knowing where your North Star is helps you find those companies that align with you and to partner with. Because not everyone's North Star is the same, and not every company is going to have the same goals and plans for that year. Um, there's a lot out there, and find your people to partner with and grow with. Because when you find your group, that's when the synergy and the energy and the creative juices really start flowing. And so if you're not feeling that with whoever you're talking with right now, move on and go find the next person to partner with.
Very good advice. Very good advice. Okay. Well, when we met at Texas Streamin', you had a very cool quiz, a self-assessment folks could do to figure out what their dominant element is. So for viewers and listeners, maybe you could share how and where they could access this self-assessment, and how best they could reach out to you to learn more about Communiscape.
Yes. So if you go to communiscape.com, that'll obviously get you to our homepage. And we are loading the quiz on there because it did get such popularity from all the Dreamin' events this summer. And we'll have it at Dreamforce as well if you're headed there. You can find us, and we have very cool beads and sunglasses that go with your element. So you can get decked out for all of the parties and walking around Dreamforce. But yes, we'll have it on our website. And then we do post regularly on Instagram. So if you're there and want to follow us at Communiscape, you'll find some great videos there. We walk through the elements. We do Talk About It Tuesday. And we're just getting ready to start our Fun Friday. We're going to be working our way through the alphabet in communication. So you can look for A, which is assumption. And so we'll be talking about what assumptions and assuming does in communication.
Awesome. I love it. Well, Brittany, thank you so much for coming on Assembly Line. Always a pleasure to chat. And have a great Dreamforce, and looking forward to talking again soon.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Scott. Bye, guys.